Hello guys, welcome back to my channel and enjoy this fanfic part 2. Now let's start the fanfic. Kakashi settled into a basic offensive stance as he stared down Naruto. Even if the boy was skilled, he couldn't go all out against him. That would defeat the purpose of the exercise if he didn't give them at least a chance to win. Still, Kakashi thought with a vengeful smirk, he could hurt Naruto a little more than the others thanks to his father's training. Naruto just waited in his defensive stance for Kakashi's response. The other two stayed in their hiding spots, not knowing what else to do but watch as the most skilled of them fought Kakashi one-on-one. The Jonin glanced at his destroyed book and, with speed only gained through years of conditioning, knelt down and threw the knife right back at Naruto. If Naruto's attack looked like a flash of light, Kakashi's easily surpassed it in speed and accuracy as it was well on its way to where Naruto stood waiting for it. It was to his secret disdain his opponent had been allowed to use his own equipment against him, one that he promised not to allow a second time. The knife was headed straight for his thigh, a non-lethal attack designed to wound him enough to keep him out of the battle. A good strategy, if Naruto allowed the knife to hit. With reflexes unknown to only the most skilled of the village, Naruto knelt and caught the knife between his fingers without as much as a scratch. The two genin did not have enough time to be amazed as they saw their sensei appear in front of Naruto and prepare a strong elbow to his gut. No. Look out, Naruto. Sakura covered her mouth and wanted so much to look away, she knew how much it would hurt. Sasuke just kept watching because from what he had seen from Naruto so far, a counter to this move wasn't outside of his abilities. Naruto twirled the knife around his fingers so that he was now gripping it as a weapon and attacked Kakashi's outstretched arm. Seeing the danger, the man began to jump back instead to forfeit his attack in turn for safety. Naruto stopped his attack mid-stretch and twirled the dagger around again, sending it straight for the man this time, no ulterior target to stop the attack. Kakashi didn't have the sheer speed and reflex Naruto had, he calculated. To try and catch it might lead to even more damage to himself and leaving himself vulnerable to a counterattack. Naruto made a dash forward with lightning speed to try and catch Kakashi, realizing what he was about to do. Before he could reach out and grab him, the man disappeared in smoke and the dagger impaled a log. Naruto silently cursed and pulled his weapon from the discarded wood, pulling it close to his eyes to observe. Finding nothing wrong, he nodded and placed it back on the leather vest where it belonged. Naruto looked around for a moment, trying to sense his sensei's new location. He was no sensor-type ninja, however, that wasn't what he used to know his surroundings. Minato had taught him to use his own senses, sometimes amplified by chakra, to sense his enemies. With knowledge combined from stolen documents of the Inuzuka clan and old clan techniques, Naruto was just as effective as the best tracker in all of Konoha. The Jonin did a good job of masking his scent, but Naruto easily found him hiding within the forest, not too far off from Sakura. It looked like he changed targets after he realized that Naruto was a bit too much to handle on open ground. As the blonde walked over to the discarded book remains, he contemplated helping her. Sure, he didn't really know her and she was technically a rival in this exercise. And she wasn't exactly the most stable girl he had seen. Then again, Naruto wasn't exactly the most normal of people either. Living in an empty compound for several years and speaking to your dead father through technology you barely understood, there were few that could boast the same. Naruto picked up the book and looked at its shredded cover, frowning at the choice in literature. It seemed the man was as lecherous as he was lazy. To think he was more interested in reading this than teaching Naruto something useful, that annoyed him. Naruto looked again toward the spot where Kakashi was approaching Sakura in a slow-stalking manner. He didn't realize it, but he had just made his own student dislike him further. Naruto made the ram hand sign with a single hand as he held the book in the other and concentrated for a moment. The book suddenly burst into ashes from a sudden electric burst that emanated from the palm of his hand. Kakashi unknowingly flinched from this action as he readied his genjutsu for Sakura. He got a chill run through his spine. What could that have been? This day just keeps getting worse. First I lose half of my book to my sensei's kid and then I get embarrassed in front of the two other kids when he almost made me break a sweat. Naruto smirked and ran into the forest after Kakashi. He wasn't about to let a good fight go to waste when he had the man where he wanted him. Sasuke still remained in his hiding spot, crouched on a tree branch waiting for a chance to strike. That chance had not come and instead he was treated to a show as his teacher almost lost to a fellow genin. That was enough to put a smirk on his face and he almost felt like laughing when Naruto, as if to rub it in further, burned the book or what was left of it. When the assassin ran into the forest toward where he could only figure Kakashi had run off too, it was a matter of course the Uchiha followed. There would surely be a chance for him to join the fight this time, prove himself to the Namikaze and the Jonin, and maybe even see Kakashi humiliated farther. Maybe this training exercise wasn't such a bad idea after all. Sakura had watched the battle between Naruto and Kakashi up until its conclusion where the man used a substitution to escape. That was when her brain went into overdrive and she realized the man had used the jutsu to escape a new spot, a spot where a piece of wood could be found. That was in the forest, where she was. That spelled trouble no matter how she looked at it, so she ran as soon as she could to get as far away from the forest as possible. Of course, Sakura had no way of tracking her sensei. Her abilities were solely in the knowledge of shinobi abilities and techniques, not so much in the ability to do them. Tracking him through chakra sense was out of the question, and she definitely didn't have the enhanced nose of an Inuzuka. No, Sakura was stuck with the ability any powerless girl had when in danger, 2 legs. Her teammates surely wouldn't help her. Hell, they probably already had the bells and were laughing as they watched her run aimlessly on the grounds from an enemy they had already beat. If she ever got her hands on them, or if they ever let her get her hands on them, there would be hell to pay. Little did she know, she had already fallen into Kakashi's genjutsu. The fact was she was standing in the middle of a clearing, only thinking she was running through bushes and splashing through puddles from the other day's rain. Kakashi remained in hiding on a nearby tree branch as he knew that with Naruto's pride, he would come running soon enough. Their battle was far from over and Kakashi was afraid of how far the assassin would take it, absently brushing a hand over his headband to where his Sharingan was stashed away. Realizing what he had just done, he lowered his hand and shook his head free of such thoughts. No matter how skilled he is, Naruto isn't strong enough for me to have to use a Sharingan on him. That would just prove he's winning in the exercise anyway. He sensed another presence arriving in the clearing and looked down to see none other than Sasuke reveal himself from the brush. The black-haired boy eyed Sakura warily, surely wondering why she was just standing there with a glazed look on her face. Kakashi felt the boy needed more than to just observe the facets of a genjutsu on another person, perhaps he too needed to get a feel for it. Well, they have to learn to see through these things sometime. He validated his decision as he created the ram sign and proceeded to place the boy in the same trick as Sakura. It was then that another Sasuke came running out of the bushes and, seeing himself with Sakura, realized that something was off. Kakashi was confused for a moment until realization dawned on him when the first Sasuke disappeared in a puff of smoke and a dozen shuriken were launched at him from the opposing treeline. Kakashi leapt off the tree branch and blocked the attack with a kunai, quickly observing the ground's now turned battlefield. Sasuke saw him now and obviously wanted to prove his worth, but Kakashi wasn't about to let another ambush lead him into a 2 versus 1. As Sasuke charged him from the front, he risked a look behind him at Sakura to see she was already gone, along with who he figured to be Naruto. As he blocked the Uchiha's first kick with his hand, he thought over the odd behavior of the assassin. Since when did Naruto care what happened to Sakura? It just didn't add up, and Kakashi wanted to find out the motive behind the move. First though, he had to deal with the overzealous child in front of him now. Sasuke was launching jabs and kicks at his center mass, but each was easily dodged or deflected, making him waste more energy each attack as he got increasingly frustrated. In a sudden move that surprised the teacher, his student sent a kick for his face that forced both his hands up to block. With his foot now caught, Sasuke used the leverage to twist his body so he now was upside down and in clear reach of the bells. Kakashi let go of the foot to swat his hand away when Sasuke again twisted his body midair and kicked Kakashi straight in the stomach, sending the Jonin sliding back across the dirt. It seemed that if Sasuke couldn't take the objective, he was quite willing to settle with hurting Kakashi instead. That was a strategy that didn't bode well for the silver-haired man. Sasuke was breathing heavily and was hunched over, all the while smirking. Not only had he been able to get through the Jonin's defenses to touch a bell, but he also landed a solid kick to his stomach. That was something not even the Namikaze had proven able to do. At least not yet. Too engrossed in his own world, Sasuke did not realize Kakashi had disappeared after going through a few hand signs. It was only at the point where he was halfway underground that the boy realized his teacher would not be knocked out of a fight from a simple kick. Kakashi stood above him with his arms crossed and a smirk with nothing but a mocking manner to his entire person. Sasuke growled at the man as he patted him on the head and walked off to where he figured Naruto was headed. Sorry Sasuke, playing with you was fun and all. But you can't even make me break a sweat. Now if you will excuse me. I have to go stop your teammates before they eat all my lunch. The Uchiha could only watch as he disappeared in a puff of smoke, leaving him to slowly wriggle out from under the earth like some mutated plant. It was a shameful embarrassment to his ego. His only solace was that neither of his teammates were watching. It seemed they were too busy breaking Kakashi's rules of eating early. What compelled them to do that? Well, Sasuke had no idea. It was still surprising to him that Naruto had actually helped Sakura when instead they could have worked together to take Kakashi down for the bells. Once he got out of this trap, he would make sure Kakashi suffered a worse fate. Naruto ran through the sparse areas of forest and clearings until he felt he had gotten enough distance from the two battling behind him. He looked down at his baggage, one Sakura Haruno being held in his arms like some princess in a movie. The girl was asleep even after he had released the genjutsu from her consciousness, not that it surprised him. Sakura really didn't strike him as one to be prepared for such an attack on her mind. He knelt down and laid her out gently on the ground, taking a moment to look over her. No other wounds from Kakashi, that was good. With her just standing there in the middle of the battle, it would have been quite easy for her to get hurt, and that was after he had arrived. To provide an ample distraction, Naruto had provided a shadow clone of Sasuke to throw off Kakashi into thinking the Uchiha had gotten there first. It was perfectly timed when Sasuke came running out and threw the man for a loop while Naruto threw a few shuriken and escaped with Sakura. It was wrong of Kakashi to just leave her standing there, stuck in a genjutsu, as bait for them. So he made the decision to rescue her in a sense, although he wondered now what to do. It was obvious that if he let her, Sakura could probably sleep through the rest of the exercise, and that was something he could not allow. An assassin was willing to use anything at his disposal to finish his objective, and Naruto was determined to win the exercise no matter what it took, so that meant finding some way to use Sakura. Bait would be too cruel, and it was obvious she wouldn't provide much of a distraction through combat. A rumble from her stomach made him realize that even if she had some skill in fighting, she would not have the energy to make use of it. Naruto remembered the lunches Kakashi had brought and realized they were defenseless. They could allow Sakura to get her strength back and then he could interrogate her on her use to him. For now though, waking her up would be sufficient. He felt a certain amount of discretion would be necessary in the process. It wouldn't do for her to be angry at him as soon as she awoke. Naruto contemplated just hitting her in the gut or making a loud noise, but he felt that both of those either wouldn't be pleasant for her or be too loud and reveal their position. In the end, Naruto decided on a more entertaining approach. They resumed the position of a princess carry until Naruto arrived at the side of the creek that ran through the training ground. He held her over it for a second, silently contemplating the consequences before shrugging and dropping her in, making a decent splash. It wasn't more than a few seconds before she surfaced, spewing water from her mouth and cursing up a storm. Naruto quickly knelt down to her level and shushed her, now only a few inches from her face. Sakura looked into his eyes as she calmed down a bit, now realizing she wasn't alone or in danger of drowning. They were a beautiful shade of blue and she could just make out lines like whiskers over his tanned skin. This was her first look at him under his hood even if it wasn't intentional and Sakura blushed from her imagination suddenly running wild. Naruto too got a new look at Sakura, now soaking wet in her tight red clothing and her wet hair floating in the water below her. He realized just how powerful those emerald orbs were as they looked right inside him and he found the way her pink hair glistened in the water made it a beautiful color. The two were almost close enough to touch and it made them both blush from the proximity. Your hair, Naruto mumbled, not sure how formulate what he thought to words that would do her justice. Sakura's eyes widened as she heard him mention her hair, a sensitive subject to her. She had always been self-conscious about her pink hair, as her mother's was bright red and her father's blonde. It made her feel different from the other kids and they capitalized on her insecurities, making fun of how she was different. Wah! What about my hair? Sakura whispered back, sounding almost desperate. She was only looking for one answer from him and then it would tell her what she wanted to know. It's so. Naruto reached out to feel one of her long bangs that framed her face, making a rare smile break over his face as he felt it gently. Bo! Sakura's elation suddenly turned to fear as a shadow was cast over Naruto from behind. He noticed as well and did a sweeping leg kick to try and trip the new arrival but a tough kick to his head sent him flying a few feet away, now motionless. Sakura's eyes shifted from him to their opponent, none other than Kakashi. It seemed that Naruto's distracted mind left him to be unaware of Kakashi's untimely arrival until it was too late. Sakura openly glared at the man who was almost surprised by her sudden change, from docile to hostile. Maybe the kick had been a bit overdramatic, but he needed to make sure Naruto went down for the count at least for a few minutes. You bastard! How dare you do that to him when he wasn't even looking? Kakashi flinched at her strong words but recovered quickly and sighed. Sorry Sakura, but he's a ninja just like you are. I waited for him to drop his guard when he was speaking with you and made sure I only knocked him out. I'm not planning to kill any of you, remember? Sakura wasn't satisfied by the answer and made to get out of the river and give him a beating but Kakashi was already walking over to collect Naruto when she got out. Hey, what do you think you are doing with him? Kakashi threw Naruto over his shoulder and started walking over to the posts, ignoring her. Sakura was fuming at this point and it was then that Sasuke made his appearance, coming out of the trees. To his surprise he found Naruto knocked out cold and Sakura looking like she was going to kill Kakashi. Before he could process what was going on, Kakashi walked past him and turned around to look at Sakura. Well, you two coming. It's almost noon and you failed to get a bell. Sasuke gritted his teeth and Sakura had forgotten about the bells at this point, only wanting to have Naruto awake again so he could finish what he was saying. Well, if you don't want lunch then you can hang out here and go home after noon. If you do want lunch, then come on. Kakashi began to lead the defeated squad to what was sure to be Team 7's first and last failed mission. Naruto awoke only a few minutes after being knocked unconscious, cursing himself for letting his guard down. It was because he allowed his feelings to interfere with the mission and made him lose touch with his concentration. He promised it would not happen again, however, it would be difficult if he was to be forced on a team with the girl named Sakura Haruno. To avoid from being noticed, he kept his head down to hide his face as he realized he was tied to a stump. It seemed noon had come along as he shifted his eyes left and right to see Sasuke and Sakura eating their lunches with defeated looks on their faces. It seemed as if Team 7 had already given in, but Naruto was not Team 7, he was an assassin. Pride would not allow this capture to stand and Naruto swore he would make Kakashi pay. All he needed was for the man to make a single sound for him to pinpoint his location, then he would have his revenge. A sinister energy began to flow through his veins as thoughts of death and revenge filled his mind, some by his own thoughts and others by an unknown entity. There. Naruto could hear his breathing just a few feet in front of him, a deadly smirk settled over his face. He wouldn't kill him, he promised himself, just cause a lot of pain. Kakashi was surveying his students as they quietly ate their lunches, or in Naruto's case, stood tied to a stump. He held no illusions that once the boy woke, he would be quite angry at his situation, but luckily that had not happened yet. Hopefully he could contain himself long enough to allow Kakashi to explain. What happened next happened so quick that Kakashi would never have been able to stop it, even if he did know what was to come. As if the rope was made of paper, Naruto ripped straight through it and made a dash for Kakashi with his hidden blade out and ready to slice. He sent his arm lurching forward with the blade so that it would impale the older man's shoulder, a sure way of disabling his arm. Kakashi made to grab it as the other two could only watch in surprise and horror as the assassin made his deadly retaliation. Kakashi caught Naruto's wrist and attempted to twist it only to find it was as hard as steel, making his grip slip. Naruto's hood had covered his face from Kakashi's view up until now, but the boy looked up at his face and allowed him to see red orbs before the boy launched a few needles from his mouth that embedded themselves in his neck. Before Kakashi could even bring his spare hand up to remove the needles, his entire body felt like it was made of jello and he fell back just as the knife sliced through flesh. Naruto smiled maniacally at the sight of his blood on his hidden blade and brought it to his face to look at even closer. Kakashi's eyes widened in fear as he realized he really couldn't move, the needles must have had a poison of some sort. He was completely defenseless to the Kyuubi-influenced Naruto. Sasuke was smirking like crazy at the sight of Kakashi being downed by his partner. He knew that Naruto had been beaten too easily. What he couldn't see was that Naruto was about on the verge of cackling evilly over the blood on his blade, nor could he actually see just how bad the wound in his sensei's shoulder was. Sakura was glad that Naruto had defeated Kakashi, but after the first few seconds of laying on him and still not getting up, Sakura knew something was wrong. Even though she was frightened almost to the point of not being able to move, she knew she had to go over and stop him before he did anything else. Maybe he would listen to her. Or maybe he wouldn't. He had smiled at her though, a friendly caring smile that she knew was genuine. It was nothing like the fake ones the other kids would give her when she was young. He really did care about her and now Sakura was going to show she cared too. Crawling over to the two, she now saw the extent of Kakashi's injury and how scared he looked at the moment. 3 little metal shards glistened in the sunlight on his neck and she figured Naruto had shot him with needles to disable his movement, a smart move indeed. The blade to his shoulder was over the top though and it threatened to bleed straight through the jacket. Kakashi-sensei. She mumbled quietly in concern for the man and turned her attention to Naruto who now had his blade ready for another slice, this time at the neck. Did you think you had beaten me, Kakashi? I will show you just how far one can go before death takes them. Sakura realized what Naruto was foreshadowing in his whispers and grabbed onto his back, gripping him tightly and turning his attention away from their teacher. Please stop, Naruto. You've beaten Sensei already, here look. She was crying as she showed him the two bells she had taken the liberty of grabbing from Kakashi's belt. We won, see? You don't have to fight anymore. Sakura didn't like seeing him like this scary being, she wanted him to smile again. Naruto broke the unknown entity's hold over him after he was grabbed by Sakura, seeing her cry just made him feel worse. He began to move out of her hold off of Kakashi and turned to look at her, just sitting there and crying while holding those two pitiful bells. Those bells. No, the exercise had made him show his killer instincts his father had warned to leave only for assassinations. He had made Kakashi into his target and that was something he was never supposed to do. Sakura just watched as he got up and walked over to Kakashi's neck and pulled the 3 needles out. He then unzipped the Jonin's jacket and pulled it back so he could see the wound seeping through the undershirt. The hidden blade once again came out, making Kakashi and Sakura fear another attack, but instead the boy used it to cut away the shirt from the wound and quickly make a gauze for it. Sakura and Kakashi were amazed at his multiple skills as he showed off his medical expertise of treatment on the field. Naruto confirmed to them he had not hit any vital arteries or veins and that once Kakashi's feeling returned to him in the next few minutes, he could safely make it to the hospital. The assassin walked over to the sniffling Sakura and knelt down to her level, silently and gently taking the bells from her hands and placing them in his pocket for a moment. He then grabbed both of her hands and held them over his own as he kissed them in silent apology for scaring her. Sakura missed the original intention of it after he kissed them and blushed uncontrollably, forgetting her tears instead for the beating of her heart. I'm sorry for scaring you, Sakura. I shouldn't have done what I did to Kakashi. Sakura was staring at him dreamily, except she was in her own world as she mumbled her response. Well, as long as you are sorry. That's all Naruto could hear as he got up and walked over to Kakashi again, who was lying down, just watching him interact with Sakura. As long as you're sorry, it's alright that you forgot our anniversary. I'll forgive you if you give me a massage. She giggled to herself and sighed dreamily again as for the first time she daydreamed about a different boy than Sasuke. Kakashi. Naruto knelt down to his teacher and produced the 2 bells, laying them down next to the man. It seems I failed this test of teamwork and I almost got you killed. I guess I still need more training to keep my killer instincts inside me, along with a few other things. Until then, I'd only be a danger to these 2 or anyone working with me, and I won't allow that. Please allow these 2 to pass. They don't deserve the shame of returning to the academy when they weren't even given the chance to have a real teammate. Kakashi's eyes widened. Naruto had realized the value of the exercise from the start. Where will you go now? He had to ask because it sounded like Naruto wasn't going to forgive himself for this incident. I will return to my compound and I doubt I will leave again. For a very long time. Naruto took a lasting look at Sakura as if to take a mental picture before shaking his head. Kakashi swore he could see a smile under his shaded hood as he looked at her. By the time Kakashi could move and order the 2 other genin home, Naruto was long gone. He would postpone the results of the test until a few days later. That should give him time to think about what exactly to do in this situation. It would also give him time to recuperate from the wound given to him by Naruto and acknowledge the fact he really isn't the boy from when they lived together. Naruto was a true assassin like his father. His performance that day proved what happened when you combine his skills with Kyuubi's influence. If he could not control that bloodlust, Kakashi's shoulder paled in comparison to the fate of Konoha. 2 weeks later, Namikaze compound. Naruto sat in a meditative stance in the basement of the main building where his ancestors lay buried. This place helped him focus with its peace and quiet and gave him an odd feeling of recuperation when either his body or mind was tired. He felt that it would be the best place for the mental conditioning he had been putting himself under as both training and punishment for his attack on the Jonin Kakashi. It was practice of putting up mental barriers that would not allow him to so readily react to assassin stimuli in the environment, giving him time to rationally make a decision. It was also training to better control Kyuubi's power and influence over his body as he realized all too well how dangerous the beast was. His father had let him know of its presence inside him early in the training and made sure Naruto knew that his everyday would be a constant struggle for power with the fox. So far it had yet to interact with him directly, but its release of chakra 2 weeks ago revealed it was very much awake and very much observant of the world around them. To stop Kyuubi, Naruto had to first keep his own emotions in check before he could hope to tame the beast itself. That was what he was trying to do, at least until he heard a faint knock on his gate. Even in his focused condition, Naruto still kept his senses on high alert. The knock still surprised him, not by the fact that he heard it but because of the simple fact someone had located the compound and actually dared to visit him. The only person that knew where it was a Namikaze and possibly the third. The Hokage sounded like an unlikely culprit due to age but also made the most sense because of how he left the training exercise after technically joining the ninja force. In a way it could be seen as going AWOL. Either way, a second knock meant they weren't leaving, so he got up in a bit of agitated state and made his way through the house and outside to the large door. The knocking had not grown in sound nor frequency, just the occasional hard tap required to make a sound on the large wooden door. Naruto sighed and opened up the gate with a strong yank on the handles, revealing the teeming forest life around the hidden compound. He was taken by surprise though, as the visitors were not who he was expecting. Kakashi, Sasuke, and even Sakura were all standing in front of his gate waiting for him to open it. Kakashi greeted him with an "I smile" and wave while Sasuke just stood there with his hands in his pockets. Sakura had a light blush as she waved and gave a nervous "hello" to the Namikaze air. Naruto was confused. What were they doing here? What are you doing here? Better yet, how do you even know where here is? We've come to get you for Team 7's first official mission, of course. Kakashi explained with a little too excited tone that utterly confused Naruto. But I'm not part of. Kakashi held up a hand and sent Naruto a look that showed he was being serious. I talked it over with the Hokage. We both feel like while this team could use some work, it still has the most potential to succeed. Or fail. That's why even after you left you are still considered a member of Team 7. Now then, are you ready for a delivery mission? Kakashi was disappointed that all his effort in building up the suspense was met with sighs of disappointment or the usual blank stare from Naruto. Great. Just when I thought life was getting interesting. Sakura complained out loud. TCH. Figures we don't get a real mission because Kakashi here made us late to pick up our mission for the day. Sasuke rolled his eyes but kept his annoyance in check as usual. Naruto just sighed and joined them outside the compound, silently closing the door as quiet fell over them. Well, where's the package? Let's get this over with. Naruto seemed somewhat depressed about their first mission together and it brought the group down. Kakashi produced a scroll that had the client's package sealed within. Naruto eyed it for a moment before Kakashi placed it back safely within his vest's chest pockets. The other two genin fell into step as Kakashi began to lead them out of the forest and toward their destination, grass country. We are to deliver this package to our allies in Kusagaker. You see, we are in sort of an alliance with them since before the Third Shinobi War. We often pass general knowledge back and forth during peacetime to keep relations high. We are returning some documents and books back to grass country after having them on loan. Naruto just listened and accepted the mission as sounding pretty routine. Sakura raised her hand regardless. So Kakashi-sensei. Our allies in Kusagaker, they are ninja too. Kakashi looked at her as they walked at a leisurely pace and nodded. Yes, Sakura. They are well known for their use of flora in their techniques. The weakness is that their jutsu are most effective with grass, own plant species, so if their ninja leave their home country the jutsu effectiveness is lost. Sakura seemed to accept the explanation but pressed him for the real answer she wanted. Does that mean we won't have to fight any ninjas? Naruto could tell by her voice, she was scared. It unnerved him. What shinobi was afraid of fighting, of death? Kakashi realized she needed comfort and patted her head playfully, earning him a glare. Don't worry, Sakura, it's just AC rank. The worst we might find is a highwayman, no ninja to worry about. Sakura breathed a sigh of relief and Sasuke's mood seemed to drop a bit. Naruto didn't really much care as long as the mission got over with and done quickly. He had better things to do than be entertained as the favored village pet, which was obviously the only reason why they allowed him to stay on Team 7 after what happened. They didn't want to lose his cooperation yet because they still needed him. Naruto would give them the satisfaction of playing along. For now. Kakashi eyed Naruto as they walked, wondering what he was thinking with what had just happened. Surely he was surprised and most likely suspicious, but it seems as though no memories of Kakashi from before sprang up. He wouldn't give up though if there was a chance that Naruto still remembered him, and he would do everything he could to make Naruto drop his suspicions and show that both he and Konoha meant him no harm, no ulterior motive. In the country of Kusa, the hidden village Kusagaker resided in the center of a large grassland reserve that found itself eventually surrounded by tall grass and forest. The village itself was not as impressive or large as a major nation's and as such did not have as much of a dominating presence over landscape. The walls were made of tough native bamboo held together by chakra roots used by the original Kusa shinobi who inhabited the grasslands. The village had only a few hundred inhabitants at a given time, dozens often coming and going with either trade or missions. The shinobi corps was made up of a few dozen chunin and jonin, while each generation led to a handful of genin going on to learn further. It was a sad note that village elders had recorded a steady decline of shinobi and academy students. Such was their position that within a few decades only a small group of ninja would be left within the village. This of course caused much grief with the elders and the village leadership. However, their funding was not getting any larger as Kusa was a small agriculturist nation with little income. In addition, it had strong allies with Konohagakure to the immediate east and Tanagakure to the south. While this meant little overall income for the shinobi of Kusa, it also guaranteed military intervention from allies should they be attacked, and this was enough to keep the daimyo content. However, traditionalist shinobi factions did not see this in such a good light. While they knew their country would never be a major nation, nor did they wish to try, seeing the destruction of their northern neighbors in their attempt, they still did not wish to lose what they still had. This led to tension following the Third Shinobi War over a decade ago that brought about the formation of a dissident faction. These shinobi continued to pester the loyalist Kusagaker ninja and hamper what little progress the village makes. Their primary objective seems only to harass Kusa operations, but in honest truth they had little info on the group's true plans, if any. Without the manpower to deal with such a problem and not wanting to find further embarrassment by asking other nations for support, Kusa kept this a hidden secret. It wasn't so difficult to do as the ninja rebels kept confined to Kusa. The only problem was when foreign shinobi would enter the land, which could definitely lead to a confrontation. It was at this junction after the war that a formal alliance was made with Konohagakure for their help of freeing Kusa from Iwagakure and later Tanagakure for mutual support in case of another war. The village leader knew that if the rebels could not be directly dealt with, the best they could do was personally lead and protect foreign shinobi while in the land of Kusa. In this was the irony that the rebels targeted Kusa ninja, which only led to a higher chance of danger for the travelers. However, the Kusa ninja knew their own backyard well and were able to skillfully avoid the rebels. Now in current time, Kusa continues to rely on its allies for both trading of goods and knowledge. It is their hope that either a prodigy will come about from their withering crop of students or that a terrible happening will come upon the rebel faction they still knew so little about. It was at this point though that most considered the rebels a fairy tale, as none had been encountered for quite some time, something more to scare a child than a Jonin of Kusa. But the village leader knew they were still out there, and that was why he knew what had to be done when news of a Konoha squad was coming to return sensitive documents. A squad was assembled of 3 Chunin and 2 Genin to escort their visitors safely to Kusa. To the Genin it was seen as a survival exercise and a chance to meet other ninja from a different nation. To the Chunin, it was an unfortunate B-rank babysitting job. Nothing in a shinobi mission is set in stone though, an important lesson ninja must take to heart. Something that seemed to be lacking in Kusa's teachings that would come to hurt them. Kusagakure. Administration Building. The administration building of Kusagakure was the equivalent of the Hokage Mansion in Konoha. It was where the ninja leadership was based out of and also where important functions such as mission assignment and archives were held. However, as the village was quite small, the building was shared with the civilian arm of government for the city and no one actually lived there as the Hokage did in their mansion. It was here that the village leader, Akuru Take, was officially assigning the Konoha escort mission to a group of gathered shinobi. He was a middle-aged man who had been part of the Kusa resistance during the Third War and looked over his gathered shinobi with veiled disappointment. While all Chunin were clad in the beige flak jackets of Kusa and sage green clothing dispensed upon promotion, both they and the child Genin looked quite unhappy to take on such an important mission. It seemed most of the village still thought of the rebels as myths, even though the time since their creation hadn't even been 2 decades. Do you understand the mission outlines? Meet our Konoha allies at Tenchi Bridge and escort them safely back here, to Kusagakure. The Chunin straightened out and saluted him, allowing the Genin to follow by example. Yes, sir. The leader of the squad took the mission details from Akuru and placed them safely in his pocket before rejoining his team. Remember the importance of this mission. Under no circumstances should our Konoha allies come into any danger by the rebel faction based out of the area. The ramifications could be dire if you fail. He warned them in an ominous tone, hoping to rouse them from their laziness. It seemed to work as a bead of sweat appeared on the Genin and lesser Chunin. The squad leader stayed confident and gave him a nod before leading his team out the exit. As soon as they left, Akuru sighed and brought a hand to his forehead in exasperation. Even if the rebels were not directly fighting them, their presence had plagued both him and the village of Kusagakure for far too long. If only our clan of assassins remained, I could have requisitioned their assistance. Their agile glider troop would slice through those bandits and rogues with little trouble. The country of Kusa was once home to a small clan of assassins based out of northern Kusa where the forests were the thickest. They made their hideout in the highest of treetops and would freelance their skills to Kusa for a reasonable price, acting somewhat like a mercenary force. The only problem was that they refused to recruit outsiders. Instead, they were content to allow their customs and their clan to slowly die off with each passing generation. Now, this wouldn't have been a major problem until the Third Shinobi War happened. It was obvious this war had done as much damage to Kusa as it did to Aim or Tani. The Iowa shinobi steamrolled right through their home territory on the way to Konoha's border. Seeing this as a direct threat to their livelihood, the assassins engaged the Iowa shinobi in hit-and-run attacks and guerrilla raids on their rearguard. For a while, they were able to succeed in hurting Iowa's morale and supplies as they knew the land well, and the Iowa shinobi were unable to use their earth jutsu to full effect. This lasted for a few months until a scouting party revealed the location of their hideout upon the return of a group of assassins from a successful mission. The Explosion Corps, along with a full platoon of Iowa shinobi, were called in to deal with the problem. Upon the operation completion, the giant tree that had housed the assassins was felled and the clan was wiped out. It was said that the infamous Gari of Iowa was killed in this battle and was a great loss to the Explosion Corps talent pool. The only thing Kusagaker had left that was unique to it was their special flora ninjutsu, the ability to manipulate the local plant life with chakra. Even some of the most skilled users of this special hidden jutsu were said to be able to create life, similar to Senju Hashirama's ability of Mokuden. Alas, no such user currently lived. So many opportunities lost. Sometimes the leader wondered how Kusa still stood with its problems. But how did any nation stand when it should fall? Through lies, of course, bluffs of power and dignity long lost. Kusagaker was holding on by a very thin thread, and it was only a matter of time before it snapped. Who would be the one to tie the thread back together? The Kusa rebels. Over his dead body perhaps. Konoha or Tani. It wouldn't be as bad as some people would think, but it was not his place as village leader to say such things. It was his duty to ensure the rope did not snap, or if it did, hold it together long enough for someone to come along and tie it back together. Perhaps this time, I will ask Konoha for assistance in this matter. Or, perhaps my old pride from my days of resistance fighting will resurface and stop me from doing so. Sir. Another squad has arrived for its mission. Akaru quickly woke from his long stupor and noticed one of his Jonin had arrived with his Genin squad, one of the brighter hopes in a dimming world. Ah yes, I apologize for the delay. It seems I got lost in thought. The secretary bowed and returned to her own desk while the Jonin apologized for the intrusion. This particular squad had someone very unique, a redhead by the name of Karen. She had come along in a trader caravan, and it was said they found her wandering the northern area near the ruins of the assassin guild there. The girl was found to have a great potential for a shinobi career, and she quickly proved to be a capable genin, all happening within the span of a month or so. It was now almost a year since the girl had come, now the age of 13. The man sensed a greater destiny in her and held high hopes she would go far in the village. Ah Gen-san, your mission today will be the usual, grass egg hunt. A collective sigh came from the genin as the infamous D-rank mission struck again. The Jonin sweat dropped and graciously accepted the contract scroll. The tall grass that surrounded the village's hilly location was infested with a certain invasive species of tree that came from the outlying forest. As Kusagaker sat in a relatively fortified spot on the hilly plain, the outlying grassland between the forest gave the village a certain safety zone between the large creatures and other dangers that infested the forest. For the shinobi, it offered a better kill zone and view between the forest and the village for early warning should an attack come. It was called an egg hunt as the tree species seeds were quite large and resembled eggs of a bird somewhat. If they were allowed to come to fruition, the village would be surrounded by forest within a few decades, and that was something they did not want. So, they employed their bored genin with the job of collecting the eggs from the tall grass every season when the seeds would be released. Needless to say, It was not a fun task for the young ones to do every year. At the very least, it inspired them to try hard to get promoted so they would not have to endure the job as much as it was usually delegated to any available genin before higher ranks were called. We will get to work right away, sir. Come on, you three. Gen led his squad out and Akaru chuckled, swiveling his chair to view the small village and the bright morning sun rays. What a beautiful day. But is this a good or bad omen? Konoha, Kusa border. Team 7. Kakashi led the squad forward through the thick brush of Konoha's forest floor. As they approached the border, he wanted them to stay off the main path as a precaution in case there were bandits waiting at the bridge. It was there they were supposed to expect an escort of Kusa shinobi, and because the village wasn't far from the Tenchi, the Kusa shinobi could be expected right at the bridge when they arrived. It was an odd tradition the village had set, forcing every squad moving through Kusa to be guided by their shinobi. Of course, a foreign shinobi should be watched and even deterred from exploring, but an allied nation should have a degree of trust. For them to force Konoha shinobi to have babysitters was somewhat embarrassing for the larger nation, but as the village was known for, they allowed it for peace to reign between the two nations. Kakashi-sensei. Is this really necessary? I mean, I know a ninja should be able to hide and such, but you said Kusa was our ally, why do we have to hide from them? Sakura complained to their teacher as they walked through bushes and went around large rocks and trees. Well, Sakura, you said you didn't want a fight. Staying off the main trail is one of the best ways to accomplish that, wouldn't you say? Sakura pouted and brushed a branch out of her face as they pushed through a bush. Yeah, but this wasn't exactly what I had in mind. Sasuke just groaned in annoyance and she quieted down, albeit with stubborn reluctance. Looks like about time I call Naruto back from scouting duty. We are not too far from the bridge. Kakashi made a bird call that echoed through the forest, searching out the assassin that was further on ahead. Instead of a rustle of leaves signaling the boy's return, another whistle was sent back to the Jonin. It seemed the boy wanted them to come to him instead, which was fair considering he had probably already reached the bridge. Alright, looks like Naruto has arrived at the bridge already. Let's pick up the pace a bit so we can wait for the Kusa squad together. Kakashi and his two charges broke into a silent run through the forest to reach the outlying crevice that signaled the Tenchi Bridge's underlying river. Naruto was crouched behind a rock as he spied the bridge with a keen eye, looking out for threats. While they were technically within Kusa's borders, the forest on their side was still teeming with fire country flora and fauna, making it so a Kusa shinobi's hidden jutsu would have no effect as long as he remained on their side of the bridge. Naruto. Seen anything suspicious? The blonde didn't even react to their presence, merely waving them over to the rock with a hand signal. Nothing, which is exactly the problem. The Kusa squad should have been here by now. The fact unsettled Kakashi a bit, but he was sure there was a reasonable explanation, quite possibly laziness on their Kusa counterparts' end. Does that mean something happened to them? Sakura asked out loud, shaking a little. Kakashi patted her on the head and gave her a smile, much to her ire. Don't worry about it, Sakura, it just means we get to rest a while until they get here. Naruto looked back as Kakashi sat down and got out his book to read under the shade of a tree. Sasuke wandered off to a corner of their little area and just sat down on a rock, looking quite bored. Sakura herself just looked around and, not seeing anywhere she would feel comfortable, just plopped down in the grass and looked up at the sky. Naruto shook his head at their laid-back attitude as his instincts told him that it was more than tardiness that held the Kusa squad up. Without Kakashi's permission, he couldn't go off alone and investigate it. Generally this wouldn't be a problem, but even if there was the slightest chance a Kusa patrol caught him unattended, that would lead to problems for Konoha. The last thing he needed was some sort of sanction or escort thanks to some silly C-rank mission. So he chose to begrudgingly wait for when Kakashi realized that there was indeed something wrong and allowed them to go and investigate. He sat down in a meditative stance and began to focus his chakra and take in the chakra around him, allowing him to reach out and touch the places around him and sense the living things there. As he expanded this area of vision past Tenchi Bridge, a battle was just coming to an end between Kusa Shinobi and the rebels. Kusa Forest. The genin could only watch in horror as their squad leader was cut down by a brute of man with a broadsword larger than their heads. The two other Chunin had already been captured by a flora jutsu they recognized as a hidden jutsu from the village, meaning that it wasn't only bandits in the group but actual rebels their elders had warned them of. That meant they were not capable of standing against them and forced them into the only option, surrender. Ha! Damn fool didn't stand a chance against my kenjutsu. The brute padded over the grass ninja looking for important documents while the two Chunin tried wriggle free from the vines. A rogue Kusa ninja, obvious by their scratched headband, stood over them as they writhed in pain on the forest floor. You two should know better, the more you resist the tighter the vines grow. Both of you will be killed soon enough anyway though so it doesn't matter. He. He chuckled darkly as the two muffled their protests under the vines covering their mouths, having little strength left. A few bandits held the two genin down, a girl and a boy. The brute smiled as he found purchase, a mission scroll detailing that the squad was to meet up with a Konoha group with important documents to be returned to Kusa. Documents like those were inaccessible to the rebels as they usually remained locked up tight within the village, a place even they could not raid. But with it out in the open, it was their chance to steal it. With the genin of Kusa and perhaps a Konoha shinobi as a bargaining chip, they would have a higher standing and would force Kusa to acknowledge them along with the rest of the nations. Hey boss, what do you want to do with these two? The man looked at the two scared genin. Their uncontrolled shaking only got worse when they saw the two Chunin cease struggling and the vines slowly withered away, their job done. Well, we could use some hostages, hell maybe we could use them for labor. The bandits quickly tied them up and led them off to their encampment while the leader remained with the rogue ninja. Get Kyoko and go to Tenchi Bridge, use these uniforms. He prodded one of the dead Chunin with his foot. Impersonate the loyalists and get the documents without killing anybody. That seems a little humane to me. The man chuckled as he knew how twisted this particular ninja was. He enjoyed killing and was not one for underhanded tactics. See if you can grab one of the Konoha shinobi too. If we can take one hostage then we can really get somewhere. Thanks to that old bastard Akaru, all foreigners are able to avoid our patrols when they enter. This is the first chance we've had to ambush one. Don't mess it up. The ninja flinched under the brute's glare and nodded, not wanting to get on his bad side. Sure thing, I'll head out right away. He gathered up the dead shinobi's clothing and headed off to find his companion. The leader himself figured it would be best if he went along too, just in case the bad feeling he had came true. He set off to reach the bridge for an early vantage point for the meeting between Konoha and Kusa. Naruto jolted a bit as he felt a large chakra presence approaching the bridge, along with two smaller ones. They were still a ways off, but at their speed it wouldn't be very long until they arrived. Naruto woke from his trance and saw Kakashi get up and walk over to him as the other two were not paying attention. He knelt down to Naruto's level and handed him a scroll, the same one with the documents they were to hand over to Kusa Shinobi. His eye locked with Naruto's and it spoke volumes. The man looked deathly serious compared to his laid-back attitude shown to Sakura. I'm giving this to you Naruto as I have some business to take care of nearby. I want you to accept the Kusa escort and reach the village as fast as you can then hand this directly to their village leader, no one else. Sasuke and Sakura will be in your care until we meet again in the village, are we clear? Naruto accepted the scroll reluctantly, suspicious of the man's behavior. What business could you have that would jeopardize the mission? Kakashi looked at the bridge with a far-off look in his eye and shrugged. Consider it long-range scouting. I'm going to investigate the area and make sure the path is clear for you and your escorts. Kusa isn't necessarily the most well-patrolled country in the world, and there might be a bandit camp or something nearby. Naruto accepted this as fact, as he had a similar suspicion, still, though the man was going against Kusa's rule for foreigners. As if reading his mind, Kakashi patted his shoulder in comfort. Don't worry. I may not be an assassin, but I know how to get around without being seen. Now good luck. He waved before disappearing in a puff of smoke. His departure brought the others back into focus as they looked at where their sensei had been. Where did Kakashi-sensei go? Sakura said in a slight panic as she watched Naruto get up, pat his robe of dirt, and stow a scroll away beneath his vest. Sasuke just got up and joined Naruto near his boulder, sensing they would be moving out soon. Sakura soon joined the bandwagon as it seemed Naruto wasn't going to answer her question. As soon as they both were behind him against the boulder, Naruto turned to address them with the news. Kakashi said that we would go along with the Kusa patrol back to their village and complete the delivery while we wait for him there. He said he had some scouting to do, to make sure the path to the village would be safe for us. Until he gets back, I'm in charge of the mission. Naruto and Sasuke shared a momentary glare before the Uchiha backed down. A silent battle of wills had led to Naruto's unanimous promotion to squad leader. Oh, okay. Well, I'm ready when you two are. Sakura accepted his explanation and was ready to get the mission over with, curious as to what the other village would be like. Let's get moving. All this waiting is boring me. Sasuke drawled as Naruto waited a moment, then shrugged. It seemed as though they would meet them on their side of the Tenchi. Come on. I sensed their approach a while ago. The three made their way across the long bridge and kept to the middle so they wouldn't have to look down at the raging river below. On the other side, the two rebels in disguise waited somewhat impatiently, only to be rewarded with the sight of three kids. While Naruto's clothing was a bit of a stir, they were too young to recognize what an assassin's uniform looked like, nor were they well informed on Konoha's military strength. They began to whisper to each other as they sized them up. The one with the weird clothes is heavily armed and looks to be the leader. The other two are keeping behind him with a level of respect given unconsciously. He could be a problem. The black-haired one, I recognize him as an Uchiha. They are tough warriors and have a Kekkei Genkai. We should try and capture him. I dunno, the girl is obviously the easiest. She looks pretty uneasy and out of place, an easy grab. Then we will go for her in case we can't grab the Uchiha, but the documents come first. Right. They ended their conversation just as soon as the squad walked up. Little did they realize Naruto picked up on their conversation with his advanced hearing and realized just what kind of harm they meant to him and his squad. However, as far as he could tell, they were loyal Kusagaker ninja, so that would imply the entire village would be hostile. Looks like this mission got a lot more complicated. Naruto silently cursed in his mind as they stopped a few feet away from their Kusa counterparts. Welcome to Kusa. Honorable guests from Konoha. The woman of the two ninja did a not-so-graceful bow, as if she was putting on a very disliked act. You are our escorts, I presume. Just you two seems a bit light from what I had figured. The male frowned but quickly put on a smile as he gestured with his arms to the forest and presumably Kusagaker. Well, as I'm sure you know, Kusagaker isn't a major village like Konoha. We can't afford extensive border patrol units as you can. And because we've been having to escort guests such as yourself for over the past decade, Our leader has gotten a bit lax in assigning the job when the manpower can be used elsewhere. Naruto had to admit, the two put on a good show, he had expected them to attack by now. Very well, we accept your escort. As our guides here, our fate is in your hands. Naruto's bait worked as the man smirked at the word fate. Sounds like a plan, the village isn't too far off anyway, so it'll be a short trip. We will take the documents for safekeeping and hand it to the village elder upon arrival so you don't waste your time. Naruto remembered Kakashi's words and something didn't add up to him. The ninja seemed intent on taking the package now before they reached the village, while if they waited the entire ninja populace could ambush them in the village. What did that mean? It means that these aren't Kusa ninja. They are bandits. Or worse, rogue ninja. Naruto's thinking had led to a slight pause and the man coughed a bit to get him to focus. Naruto nodded and reached into his vest, making his way over to the man. A rustle in the bushes alerted all five of them to the new presence, and Naruto remembered the larger chakra. He had thought it an animal of some kind. It was no animal though, just a very large man. The sword he wielded was massive and it was coming down straight on Naruto's head. Sakura screamed as the impact broke the ground beneath into crumbling pieces and sent dust flying over the battlefield. The two rebels had jumped away, surprised by their leader's sudden appearance. Perhaps they hoped it was part of his plan to jump in and have the two groups work together to defeat him, further extending their little farce. The serious look on the man's face though alerted them that he had only joined in because of immediate danger. Damn it, Yuriko, that kid almost killed you. The ninja were shocked when he said that, and the man sputtered a response as Sakura tried to defend their teammate. Naruto would never hurt an ally ninja. Whoever you are, you're lying. Sasuke looked the man over and knew the telltale sign of a bandit. He got into a dangerous stance in preparation for combat. Sakura, get ready. This guy isn't a pushover. The pink-haired girl took her attention away from the new arrival back at Sasuke and nodded, taking out a kunai for defense. The brute looked at her and smirked. Obviously she didn't know her teammate well. The kid was practically leaking with killer intent as he was surely anticipating the kill. It was the only thing that tipped him off. He pulled his broadsword out of the ground as the dust settled and his eyes widened when the kid was nowhere to be seen. Damn, I missed. Yuriko and Kyoko began to look around for trouble as they knew that the one in the robe saw through their lie. Kyoko. Cover me. I'm gonna use that jutsu again. She nodded and took out a kunai as the tense standoff came to a quiet stalemate for a moment while the missing member of Team 7 stayed out of sight. Without a single sound, a figure jumped from a nearby tree and landed on Kyoko's back, forcing her down to the ground and completely covered her from view by a white robe. Naruto retracted his blade from her neck and made to charge the one going for a jutsu when the larger man moved at a speed belying his size to intercept. Sakura watched in horror as Naruto was smashed into a tree by the larger man and Sasuke was confused why he killed that woman. Sure, he wasn't a fan of Kusa either, but to kill her, he had to have had a good reason. Goo. Naruto coughed and stabbed into the man's shoulder that had him pinned, smirking as the paralyzing poison made its way through his bloodstream. It was to his shock when the man didn't even break a sweat and he realized that his size wasn't just strength, somehow he was able to resist the poison. Sasuke charged forward toward the bandit leader, tired of waiting for an opening to attack. Sakura watched him go and remained in place, unsure of what to do until Naruto got freed. Come on, Naruto. You can get him. As the man increased his pressure on the boy in an attempt to make him black out, he disappeared in a puff of smoke. The bandit was only disappointed for a second when Sasuke came out of the corner of his eye and he blocked a solid kick with his sword's flat end. Sasuke took out a kunai and began to slash at him, getting in a few cuts, but most did nothing but make the man chuckle, further infuriating the Uchiha. As they engaged one another in a short battle of weapons, Yuriko just finished gathering his chakra for the jutsu. Vines swept from the ground and charged toward Sasuke, who was unaware of them as his whole attention was on the leader. Sakura noticed them immediately and went to shout for Sasuke to look out, only to be pulled down to the ground by her own set of vines. Before she could even raise her weapon to cut through them, her arms were entangled and her mouth and eyes were covered up as she could no longer see or speak. The tangled-up girl collapsed to the ground as the vines solidified their grip around her fragile body. One hostage down, another to G. Oh no, you don't. Naruto charged out of the brush and threw a few kunai from his pack at the man, only for vines to form a shield in front of him. Haha. If you would have kept your mouth shut, you might have gotten me. Or maybe not. Ha ha ha. Naruto cursed himself as the man was right. He saw Sakura get captured and it made his blood boil. He charged forward and saw a few vines come out of the ground to attack him. He realized then that this was the infamous Kusagaku jutsu that allowed one to manipulate plants to their own bidding. This rogue ninja was once a member of the Kusagaku ninja corps, as he guessed the other one as well. There was no time to analyze further as the vines approached him. Naruto took out his two curved tantos from his back, gripping them strongly. He sent a surge of electrical chakra through his body and formed it around the weapons. I will cut right through you. Naruto charged forward and sliced through the vines, noticing that the longer they remained in use by the ninja, the bigger they grew. He sliced through whatever attack came at him but felt like he was making no progress. Sasuke was luckily able to avoid the attack sent for him because of Naruto's outburst when Sakura was attacked. Now he was fending off the wild vines as the leader made his way over to the defenseless girl and, using his broadsword, cut the vines that kept her rooted to the ground. The rest remained on her as restraints as he hauled her over his shoulder and began to make his way over to the tree line as she uselessly struggled. Now little girl, you ain't going nowhere. He patted her behind for good measure and received a very loud yet muffled shout from the poor girl. Naruto howled in rage and made a last-ditch charge for the plant puppeteer, finally breaking through the vine wall that he had erected around himself. Shit. Yuriko knew he was screwed when the kid had eyes that screamed murder. He had thought he wouldn't fear death with how nonchalant he was about killing, but he felt like he was about to piss his pants in terror. Boss, help. The man in question looked over his shoulder and sighed, putting the girl down for a moment before charging right at Naruto's flank. Naruto this time sensed him coming in time to put up his twin swords in defense against his large broadsword. The test of strength as they pushed against one another was a short one, unfortunately. The man leaned back and then pushed forward with all his strength, breaking Naruto's guard. He kicked him right in the gut and shattered the boy's rib cage and sent him flying over the abyss of Tenchi River into the rapids. You owe me big time, ya little. Yuriko scratched the back of his head and shrugged in apology as they looked back to find Sasuke gone and Sakura still wriggling for freedom. Well, we lost the Uchiha brat. But we still got this one. He picked her up as if she was light as a stick with one hand as the other sheathed his sword on his back. What do we do, boss? The one with the robe had the documents, now that he's gone. This made Sakura erupt into a frenzy of shaking and screaming, only stopping when the large man put some pressure on her neck with his free hand. Well, I guess we can deal with a hostage for now. Who knows? Maybe he'll wash up on shore somewhere and we can scavenge what's left. The big guy sighed and walked off back into the forest to their hideout, noticing the sun was going down. Once we get back, I want you to gather a patrol and try and find that Uchiha kid. That one with the robe can wait, but he's still alive and out here, somewhere. Yuriko smirked, glad to get back into the action. My pleasure. The two continued their trek back, losing a shinobi and gaining quite an important bargaining chip to one very wounded shinobi. Kusa. Tenchi River. Night. Naruto awoke to a stinging sensation in his chest and attempted to move, only succeeding in making the sting change to unbridled pain. He tried to scream but no sound came out, only air escaping from his lungs along with a good bit of water. Damn it, boy, I'm trying to heal you. Now just sit still and don't try to speak, and you sure as hell don't start asking me questions, I'm not in the mood. Kyuubi. Damn you. I thought I kept you from interfering with my body. Naruto found himself disappointed in his mental barriers and realized Kyuubi's influence ran deeper than he had expected. You underestimate me, boy. Those pitiful walls you tried to put up did nothing to my chakra already flowing through your body. It's thanks to me you are still alive, so feel appreciative. The bridge. We were ambushed. Sakura. Naruto again tried to get up but felt a jolt of pain again and fell back with a thud. I said stop moving. Damn, are you so thick-headed? The vixen was captured but alive. If you want to rescue her useless carcass from that bandit, I suggest you take a hint. Naruto merely let Kyuubi run his course. The pain was considerable but he could feel himself slowly be pieced back together from the bandit's kick. It felt odd as someone played doctor on your insides while they were still inside you. My weapons. I can't feel them in my hands. Naruto's next concern were the two master-crafted tantos gifted to him by the Shimizu. It would be a bad omen to lose them already. I sense they washed up to shore with you. Aren't you lucky you don't have to go look? Kyuubi responded with his sarcastic drawl. Now rest. It's not your time to die yet, boy. Kusa. Sasuke sat around a small campfire, eyes darting back and forth. He had just barely been able to escape when Naruto made the rogue ninja lose concentration over his jutsu. When he saw Naruto get kicked over the edge, he knew he had to retreat to survive. Even he had to admit their leader was too strong. The thought had crossed his mind only after escaping to grab Sakura, and by then it was too late. No matter, they wouldn't kill her or else they wouldn't have bothered to restrain her. Naruto might be a bit angered and Kakashi would be annoyed, but Sasuke didn't plan to sit idle for long. As soon as he warmed up a bit, he planned to track down the bandits and destroy their camp, in the process freeing Sakura. It would kill two birds with one stone and get the other two on his team off his back. Just about that time, Kusa. Bandit camp. The leaders sat in on the huge bonfire they had in celebration for their minor yet meaningful victory. The two Kusa genin were being put to work as servers of the meat his bandits had collected while the Konoha girl was being trussed up by Yuriko. Whatever the man had in mind for her he did not know, as long as he didn't kill her though it didn't matter to him. Meeting those rogue ninja in the forest a few years back had at first been pretty troublesome for his gang, but now that he had defeated their old leader and taken over, it seemed things were finally looking up. Soon they could ransom back the kids to their villages for whatever they wanted, and if luck would bless them again the documents would remain intact wherever the robed one ended up. That kid. There was something odd about the way he fought. The bandit thought as he ungracefully chomped a bite of venison. Can't put my finger on it, but my guess is that the kid had more than just ninja training. The other two fought nothing like he did, and if the circumstances were different, I dunno if I could have beaten him. Noticing Yuriko's return, the man waved him over. Quote. He swallowed the food in his mouth before addressing the ninja, smiling at his look of disgust. What did you do with that girl? Yuriko smirked and pointed up, making him raise an eyebrow before obliging and looking into the tree line. The pink-haired girl was strung out by vines in a crucified bind. Her arms were being held out to her sides while the rest of her body was covered in the strong plant rope. Her eyes were still covered along with her mouth, surely saving the bandits any trouble they might have had with her trying to damage their ears. I figured she looked better up there as a trophy, what'd you think? The brute just nodded in agreement, knowing better than to question the ninja's odd tastes in decoration. It's fine, now just take a bite to eat before you go looking for that kid. The fire's warm and the food is cooked perfect. Yuroko took a seat on a nearby rock, forcefully grabbing a piece of meat from one of the Kusa genin shuffling by. Don't mind if I do. He smirked gleefully as he bit into the first meat he had all night. Sakura could hear the shouts and hollers of madmen down below. The fire both heated her feet as it wafted up and filled her covered vision with edges of yellowish orange when she tried to look. It didn't matter though, of course, nothing mattered anymore. She was captured, to be used as nothing but a bargaining chip to either Kakashi or the entire village of Konoha. She was a failure as a kunoichi. A tear fell from her eye. Then she remembered what they said about Naruto, how he was dead. She couldn't believe them. Naruto was too strong, too cool to die to some disgusting brute like that man, and yet, they sounded so confident they had. Sakura's muffled sobs ran through the night as more tears fell, disappearing into the fire below. She let out her tears as her crush and all she had trusted in vanished. She was no longer a sheltered girl living a happy life in Konoha. It was because of her the mission had failed, and it was because of her that Naruto had fallen. Naruto, oh Naruto, please come back. I'm so lonely and scared. Please don't be dead. Please don't be dead. Alright, we come again with a new installment of Assassin. To sum up the mission so far, Team 7 was sent to Kusa to drop important documents off. Kakashi left the squad in Naruto's hands as he went off on his own, and unfortunately they were ambushed where Naruto was thrown into a river and Sakura was captured. Sakura has a mental breakdown over being captured and Naruto is healed by Kyuubi, preparing to strike back against the bandit leader before his plans can come to fruition. In this chapter we will detail the finishing up of the Kusa mission and the sudden start of another, very important quest that will lead both Naruto and Sakura to become even closer. We will also find out just what made Kakashi leave the three alone so suddenly. Also, just as a warning to everyone, my hard drive was recently wiped of all my documents and pictures. I know, right? That means that I lost all my notes and saved chapters for all my stories, so from now on, it's going to be off of memory. We will see how this will influence the story later on, even I don't know. Alright, let's get on with it. The Creed. Stay your blade from innocence. See but be unseen. Never compromise the assassins. Nothing is true, everything is permitted. Konohagakure. Hokage office. Hiruzen Sarutobi, the leader of Konohagakure, was sitting at his desk. It had been about a day since he had sent a messenger hawk to Kakashi's squad for immediate redeployment to support Team 8 under Kurenai Uehi's request for reinforcements. Apparently it was a dire emergency and he knew that they still needed to push one particular member of Team 7's abilities to their limits to see just how strong he was. That was why he still selected Team 7 when another squad could reach Team 8 in waves so much quicker. A knock on his door made him look up and allow them entry. Come in. A message runner walked in and handed the Hokage a mission debrief scroll, something only used when a squad could not return to give the report in person. They are basically used to describe the process and outcome of the mission the squad undertook. I wonder how Team 7 did on the Kusa mission. Hiruzen quickly opened up the scroll to read, poring over Kakashi's notes and slowly became more and more impressed as it went on. As you ordered, Hokage, I left the team in Naruto's hands and observed from afar to test his abilities. While powerful, Naruto's judgment was clouded upon capture of his female teammate, Sakura Haruno. It seems that assassins really do work best alone, and this proves that Naruto is already beginning to integrate into his new social setting rather than have a cold exterior. Whether this should be encouraged or discouraged is of course to your discretion. After the battle between rebels and Naruto's squad finished, Sakura was taken to their camp where I set up to observe and rescue her if need be. It soon became apparent that would not be necessary, however, as my other student, Sasuke Uchiha, deemed it fit to launch an attack on the encampment. He was only lucky that Naruto soon arrived after to save his life, but the Naruto that attacked that camp was nothing like the one on the bridge. I saw it during our training exercise. This Naruto was a cold killer, without any emotion. Not even the sight of a captured Sakura seemed to faze him. This must be the assassin mindset his father taught him. I could only watch as he proceeded to destroy everything in his wake. Kusa Night. Bandit Camp. Well. Look what we got here. Sasuke was thrown to the ground by the leader's men after finally being captured. The fight itself didn't take too long and the men were only momentarily taken by surprise by the Uchiha. The kid was too overconfident and made more of a distraction than any actual damage. For an elite warrior of Konoha, the boy didn't do much to strengthen his reputation in his performance. While the boy's eyes looked up at him in fierce determination, the man could see him quiver in fear. What a pitiful sight. Are you afraid I will kill you, boy? Sasuke's eyes betrayed emotion for a moment before he growled and attempted to throw himself at the man only to be grabbed by the bandits behind. Violent, ain't ya, kid? Yuriko appeared at the leader's side and smirked. It looked like he wouldn't have to go searching for him after all. Sasuke felt vines creep up along his body as the bandit's hands left his shoulders to be replaced with tightening flora. He tried in vain to resist the jutsu but could do nothing as the Kusa jutsu covered him. Yuriko looked at his boss for judgment and all he did was indicate up with his finger. The sadistic ninja nodded and made the vines take him into the treetops with the girl. Now both were their hostages. Looks like tonight just got a lot better for us boys. The bandits let out a cheer and Yuriko couldn't help but think it was times like these letting a non-shinobi lead him around wasn't so bad. As the camp got back underway with its merrymaking, a lone shinobi stood high in the tree branches watching over the camp. He let a hand wander over his headband that covered one eye as he eyed the bandit leader. There was more to the man than he let on. Observing from afar could only give Kakashi so much, but from what he could tell, the bandit had shinobi training. He's captured Sasuke and Sakura and his goons will go out to find Naruto soon. My clone should get to him and recover him first if all goes according to plan. I'll wait until I know he's secure before I make a move on the camp, and I might just have to use my Sharingan for this one. Kakashi took out a few kunai and began to set up traps around in the treetops to give him an advantage for when he would attack. Upon the release of a lever, the kunai traps would launch onto the camp and add chaos to the sudden attack, giving Kakashi the edge he would need to destroy them quickly and efficiently. If it were his choice though, Team 7 wouldn't have gotten into this situation to begin with. But under the Hokage's direct orders, I was forced to leave Naruto and them to fend for themselves, just to observe his strength. It was murder having to watch them go against these bandits and not step in. I almost leapt off the crevice after Naruto when he fell, but I resisted. I doubt he would be very thankful if I saved him, and I knew it would take more than that to kill him. Even if Naruto had lost or denied his memory of his former caretaker, Kakashi still had confidence and trusted his student's abilities. It would take a lot more than that to kill Naruto, but he feared that, at least until the end of the mission, the blonde's role was over. To his surprise, he would find he couldn't be farther from the truth. Kusa border. Tenchi River shore. I'd advise resting a while longer, boy. You know you aren't at 100% yet, and you know what I mean by 100%. Kyuubi attempted to talk the boy down as he almost reverently picked the swords up and proceeded to slide them into their leather holsters on his back. I have plenty of strength left to kill them, rescue Sakura, and track down Sasuke. My body will not collapse until I allow it. Kyuubi sighed. The smoke exhaled from his snout meant his own fiery personality couldn't argue to get back into action. Very well. I anticipate the blood of this battle and wish to bathe in it. I suppose you will be entering that trance. Naruto nodded as he did final checks on his equipment to make sure nothing had come loose and was lost to the river. Satisfied he was fully prepared, Naruto went to the river edge and slowly removed his hood to view his face. He allowed his spiky blonde hair to glisten in the moonlight for a moment before bringing both hands up to shake the water free. For a moment, the peace of the night almost lulled Naruto into a deep slumber. It was so tempting to just let go of his body's aches and fall to the protective embrace of the rounded stone-ridden shore. But then he reminded himself that his teammate, someone he had unfortunately grown attached to, was in danger. It was even his fault and an assassin atoned for their mistakes, even if it meant death. But Naruto would not die tonight. There was only one that would fall that night, and the image of the man's face swam in his mind. Naruto's body began to go limp in anticipation. Kyuubi. I am entering the trance. Wake me up when he has fallen. Kyuubi huffed in annoyance but gave the boy a mental nod of assent as Naruto's conscience left, allowing only one thing to remain: pure killer intent. I have to admit, this is one thing that boy's damned father did right. With this, no emotion will get in his way, not even love. If I'm lucky, he might just kill the girl too. Naruto's possessed body suddenly jumped into action and pounded across the rocky shore and into the forest, but so silently his footsteps barely left a mark. The assassin practically skipped along the forest floor until he felt the inkling to get to higher ground. He ran up a particularly tall tree's trunk and grabbed a hold of the man-sized branches, swinging himself upright. It was easy to pinpoint the location of the bandits' camp, what with all the light and noise. Hollers and fiery orange embers flooded the surrounding forest and in the dark of night acted like a flare. As he approached, Naruto's head looked up at an even higher altitude to observe another shinobi, one he immediately recognized by the scent as his teacher. Paying him no further mind, Naruto leapt onto another tree's branch and tiptoed to its edge and balanced himself perfectly like a hawk on the edge. This gave him a perfect view of the camp, made up of a series of small tents around a large bonfire with a single hut making up the head of the camp where the bandit leader sat watching his men. Target in sight, Naruto's assassin training kicked into high gear as he planned his initial attack, assassination, and escape from the camp. If one could watch his lifeless blue eyes, they could see them dart back and forth at unimaginable speeds, observing every little factor the camp had to offer in his plan. Naruto reached into his ninja pack attached to his waist and found what he wanted, a kunai with a small plastic ball attached to it by string. He then grabbed another, this one with an explosive tag, and wielded both in either hand. The two kunai were brought up to his face in preparation to throw before he launched them at speeds that prevented them from being seen, let alone caught. Both went off instantaneously and with the desired result. The explosive kunai dug itself into the ground where the highest number of bandits sat, around 5 of the 7 the camp held. Before anyone could even turn their heads to look at it, the other kunai's cargo exploded into a flash of light, blinding all within the camp. Naruto jumped from his perch just as the explosive tag went off, filling the night with screams of agony and surprise. He fell in perfect form and took out one of his knives as he fell to the earth at alarming speeds where the final 2 bandits stood trying in vain to see. Before they could acknowledge what had happened, Naruto fell upon them and killed them instantly, both with blades to their necks. Naruto took the bloody knife out and threw it straight through the bonfire to the other side where Yuriko and the bandit leader attempted as well to get the light out of their eyes. The knife embedded itself in the rogue ninja's shoulder, who immediately grabbed a hold of it in painful shock. Ah, my AR! Before he could even utter another syllable, the poison ran through his bloodstream and attacked his heart, shutting it down permanently. A quick death, one the twisted shinobi did not deserve. But it was not an assassin's duty to get personally involved in a kill, especially that of which was not the main target. To let emotions get involved would cloud their judgment in whom to allow to live to balance the world, instead killing those who they wished to. With Yuriko dead, there lay only his target. Naruto made his way around the fire in a slow, methodical fashion as the panicking bandit brute wrestled with himself, attempting to escape the assassin he knew was there but could not see. Yuriko. This isn't funny, damn it. I can't say. He quickly had the air knocked out of his lungs when Naruto's iron fist went straight into his abdomen, making his body react by closing up. Without giving any further mercy, the blonde sent an uppercut right into his jaw, which broke immediately upon impact. For all his upper body muscle, even the bandit could not hope to stave off an assassin fully versed in hand-to-hand combat while blind. With a bone-crunching kick, Naruto sent him sliding backward into a tree and made a large crack as it fell in on itself. The assassin walked slowly to his target, clenching his left fist to reveal his hidden wrist blade, which seemed to be almost hungering for blood. With his sight slowly coming back but not yet full, the bandit painfully opened his eyes to see a figure coming toward him in the dead of the night. He realized they were far from the camp now, as the red and orange of the fire was far off behind the man or beast coming toward him now. No. Stay back, you beast. He reached for his broadsword and drew it from his tattered sheath, holding it in front of him as if he was ready for a sword fight. Naruto, if he was not in a trance, would surely smirk and laugh at his pitiful attempt to defend himself. But this was not Naruto, not the full one. This was an assassin on autopilot with deadly efficiency. There would be no playing with the target. This time he would die in one stroke. To get enough space for him to heft the blade above his head, the brute took a few steps forward and realized the figure was close enough to kill with a single sweep of his blade. Die, monster! The entirety of the blade was brought down right onto Naruto, just as he had done at the bridge when he first revealed himself. That time he could afford to miss, though. This time he knew he was in a corner and this one attack was his last chance of survival. He felt it hit but was shocked when he felt pressure push the sword back up. As his vision finally cleared, he could see the assassin he thought for sure he had killed standing there, blocking his blade with his own dagger without even breaking so much as a sweat. Naruto had parried the attack with his hidden blade, using an untapped strength that his normal conscious could only use willingly through conditioning it had yet to go through. Without even a hint of faltering under the larger man's power, Naruto batted away the sword's guard and launched himself at the defenseless man. Before he could even scream or shout in anger, Naruto's blade sunk itself deep into his neck and the man's body teetered before falling limp and dropping to the ground, all the while with Naruto riding it to the ground with his blade still deep inside his flesh. Your sins have been atoned by this vessel's blade, go on to the next life in peace. Because of the nature of the wound, the bandit leader could not respond but allowed himself to stop struggling as Naruto closed his eyes for the last time. As with Naruto's request, Kyuubi sent his chakra coursing through the boy's body for a moment to wake him from self-induced slumber. His conscience came flying back into control over his body and the stimulation was almost too great, forcing the boy to one knee. Naruto brought a hand up to his forehead to try and ease the pain from the withdrawal of his subconscious. I've killed him, he thought absently as he saw the large man on the ground, dead. Naruto reached into his robe and found what he wanted, a single white feather. He dabbed it in the wound of still free-flowing blood and brought it to his face for inspection, a reminder of sorts of his first kill. One of many to come. He took out a blank scroll and sealed it within for safekeeping so when he returned to the compound, he could store it in a more proper place of decoration. I sense someone approaching. I believe it is your teacher. Naruto checked his scent and realized Kyuubi was right, his teacher was approaching him from above. Then again, since everyone else in the area was dead, it wasn't very likely it could be anyone other than him. Naruto looked up and saw with his eyes that Kakashi had already rescued the 4 genin who stood with him on the branch, looking down at Naruto with quiet awe considering the dead man at his feet. Naruto only looked back at them with a determined, staunch stare of acknowledged victory, no smirk, no confident remark, just a stalwart stance that resembled that of a matured master assassin making yet another kill. He killed him. He did what I could not. Damn you, Naruto. You are more powerful than I could even imagine. Sasuke's awe turned to inner hatred and, even if he would not admit it, envy of the assassin's training and skills. Sakura only looked on at her crush with a newfound respect and admiration that could only come from viewing him in all his glory on a real mission, not some training exercise. The boy? No, that word did not come close to describing the mature assassin that stood below her on the forest floor. That man made her feelings go haywire just by the look he was giving her now, and she now realized that this was far more than anything she felt for Sasuke. These feelings were no farce. Sakura desired to stand beside him on that forest floor, to be a fitting partner for him both physically and emotionally. She wished to fight alongside him, to live with him, to just be in his presence. The thought almost came across her mind. She was too young to think such deep thoughts, but in the world of shinobi, life was a fleeting and precious thing. Her life could end the next day, and she did not want it to happen while Namikaze Naruto was not hers. That was when Sakura made herself a promise, that from that day onward she would do whatever it took to be close to Naruto and be strong enough to fight with him. I won't get you hurt anymore, Naruto-kun. Next time I will protect you. Naruto. The blonde-eyed Kakashi as the man addressed him from the tree branch, his arms folded and that charcoal black eye staring into his own. Nice job. Let's deliver that document together now, shall we? He made no attempt to respond, only to stand up to his full height and disappear in a blur. In just a moment he stood there in their midst, making them all quickly back away in surprise. Kakashi and Sakura were the only ones who did not move to accommodate him, as they knew it was not necessary and trusted him. It was almost as if the Kusa genin thought he would try to kill them next, but their fears were slowly allayed as the boy handed over the documents to Kakashi and was joined quickly by Sakura, whom he shared a quick smile with, which she readily returned. Geez. All this trouble over this little bit of parchment. Kakashi muttered to himself, not receiving a response, as all 4 of the children in front of him did not want to think about the day's events. The Kusa genin had seen their elder shinobi struck down so easily and were humiliated into servicing the brutes at their camp. Sakura found herself reflecting on her capture and her inability to help her team defeat the shinobi at the bridge. The Uchiha was still embarrassed the Namikaze performed better than he did against an opponent which was arguably the best challenge he had been presented in his life. Well, let's go. Kakashi led them through the forest on a night run that brought them right to the edge of Kusa and into the arms of a search party made of Kusa's best. These Junin and Chunin subordinates were the fabled users of the same flora jutsu the genin had had so much trouble fighting earlier that day. The village leader would not spare any amount of manpower to recover his and Konoha's people, and that was why he authorized sending their best. As it turned out, it was an unnecessary but welcome show of power, as the Konoha shinobi were able to rest easy for the rest of the journey. Kakashi made sure his students were well taken care of in the village's local inn and in bed before he went to see the village leader about the documents. The Kusa shinobi, although saddened by the loss of 3 Chunin, were at least able to take solace that the genin were saved and returned them safely to their families. Naruto immediately collapsed into his futon supplied by the inn, not even bothering to strip himself of his clothing or take off the covers. As soon as his head hit the pillow he fell asleep, not a usual reaction to the prospect of sleeping, but the battle had taken too much out of him. Sakura watched him fall into slumber as she was still fixing her own bedding. She smiled and dreamily sighed at how cute he looked with his robe and hood still on, just sleeping so peacefully. How he looked almost made her want to giggle, but she thought better of it, knowing it would be disrespectful to him. A grumble made her turn around to see Sasuke roll away from her in his bed, and she could only guess he thought it disgusting the look she had given Naruto. Whatever. Be jealous if you want, Sasuke, but Naruto saved both of us. I know you aren't jealous that I like him now, seeing as how you never cared in the first place. Perhaps if she had just realized this, Sakura would be saddened at admitting the fact he had never liked her. The girl had realized for a while now that he never really did feel for her, so she was able to brush past the fact without so much as a grimace. Sakura had her bed fixed and ready to go, but something kept her from getting in and falling into sweet slumber as her crush did. In fact, she felt that it was indeed he who was keeping her awake. It was just how he fell asleep that made Sakura uncomfortable. She didn't think it was right that he at least didn't take off his hood or get himself under the covers. Even with his robes on, he could still catch a cold. Making up her mind, Sakura crawled over to him and just watched him for a moment. Her hand slowly went for the hood, and she realized this would be the first time she would truly get to see what he looked like. The time that she was in the river during their training did not really count to her, as his hood was still on, only allowing her to see his shaded face. The thought of it only excited her more and made her fingers tremble in anxiety, so much so Sakura feared that he would wake only by the vibrations her trembling body was sending through the floor. Before her fingers could even lace around edges of the fabric, a gloved hand darted out and gripped her wrist tightly as another sent a blade right for her throat. Sakura froze as Naruto's body reacted on reflex as he held her from his laying position in what was assuredly a lethal move should she have been deemed hostile. Naruto immediately recognized her and saw the fear in her eyes, quickly letting her go and recovering his senses to his surroundings. Safe. In bed at some inn. Not around any enemies. It was just Sakura. Naruto reassured himself it was alright to relax, and the Haruno saw as his shoulders sagged in what could only be calm. I'm sorry, Naruto. I just saw you laying there with your hood still on and thought you would be uncomfortable. I didn't mean to disturb you or anything. Sakura was caught and felt ashamed now reviewing her actions. What could she expect from a trained assassin's reaction? It's fine, Sakura. If anything, I should apologize for how I reacted. It's just I can't really differentiate who's around me when I'm asleep, so that's how I always react. Sakura nodded in understanding but locked on to his hands as they came up to his hood that covered his identity. But I must thank you for reminding me. Amongst those I trust, I suppose I can take off my hood. Naruto took off his hood to reveal his spiky blonde hair, tanned skin, and, as Sakura had thought, whiskers that were on either cheek. His appearance was breathtaking, and it took all her willpower not to make any two outstanding reactions other than a blush and more shaking. Naruto at first was confused, but then realized she was taking in his actual appearance and found she liked what she saw. For some reason he smiled at that and felt happy. So handsome. Sakura covered her mouth as soon as she uttered the word, but soon realized Naruto had heard it with his hearing when he chuckled. Well, thank you. No one has really been around me without my hood or robe on, so knowing I don't look bad is a good thing, I guess. Sakura was amazed at how such a cold, collected killer could speak with such polite warmth, but it only made her enjoy his company more as it did intrigue her. Naruto. May I sleep near you? It was an odd request by Sakura, but was done for two reasons. One was obvious as she wanted to sleep near her crush and this was a great opportunity. The other was so she could talk to him without disturbing Sasuke, who would surely hear them speak if she lay in her bed which sat between them. Naruto had relied on his calm attitude to get him through the conversation so far, but he was at a loss now that a girl was asking such a personal request. Sure. He decided to go with his gut and what he desired, which was for the girl to stay close. I still say she is a useless vixen who has nothing to offer you, boy, but I suppose you humans are fickle when it comes to mates. Naruto ignored the fox, silently hoping it would get a muzzle or failing that fall asleep. Thank you. She hadn't expected him to say yes, so when he did she struggled to get herself moving and quickly grabbed her futon and moved it so they would be mere inches from one another. Naruto just watched her do this work, not finding it in himself to take his eyes away. The girl mesmerized his mind in so many ways that should have been foreign or ignored to him through the training he experienced. It seemed even his father could not prepare him for a woman's influence, as this was something he could not even comprehend, let alone fight against. That is if he wanted to resist, which was the last thing on his mind as the girl lay down inches from him and stared at him with the most innocent face. I never got to properly thank you for saving me, Sakura said as she settled under her blanket and met Naruto's uncovered eyes, barely able to make her voice go above a whisper. Naruto's face dipped with a frown and she realized that he did not see it the same as she did. I did not save you, Kakashi did. If anything, I am the one who got you captured in the first place. If I had only stayed focused, I could have. Naruto caught himself from second-guessing his actions. What was done and he could do nothing to change it. I didn't see it that way. Sakura mumbled in disagreement, nervously playing with her hair. You couldn't have stopped them from getting me, not with all that chaos. You came to the camp and defeated them all. If it wasn't for you, Sasuke and I, we may not have made it back to Konoha alive. I owe you my life. Naruto just shook his head and made to caress her cheek on instinct, but reared back at the last second, realizing what he was about to do. It's fine. I'm your teammate and I was the squad leader. It was my duty to defeat them. Sakura could see it in his eyes that the answer was only half true while the rest was not said. Naruto, I don't want to be weak like that again. I don't want you to get hurt because of me. Naruto was taken by surprise as the girl got even closer to him and raised her voice in distress. It was obvious that the thought of him getting hurt because of her was not something that settled well on her conscience. He wanted to assure her he was bound to get hurt either way, but it seemed she was not fishing for reassurance but something else entirely. I know I don't have any right to ask, and I know I was placed on this team to learn from Kakashi, but... Sakura stifled a sob as she spoke too quickly to cover her tears that began to fall. I don't think I can learn from anyone but you. I want you to teach me like you learned. Please, Naruto, I don't want to be weak anymore. Naruto's blue eyes widened at her request. She wanted him to be her teacher. Sakura knew she wasn't a Namikaze, and what she was asking was surely breaking every secrecy rule the assassins had set up, but there was nothing that mattered to her more now than being his equal. To be even closer to him, Sakura was willing to learn the arts of assassination and be just like him, even if it meant she would have to go through training the likes of which she never would have thought possible before. Sakura, I couldn't. I mean, I'm just a genin, a novice assassin. I'm not qualified to teach. Her tears and sobs seemed to become more pronounced and he felt himself losing resistance. Please, Naruto. Kakashi. He told me I was a disgrace to Kunoichi. I don't think he would even try to train me right. Please. Please. Naruto couldn't believe their teacher would say that, and it only served to make his blood boil. HMPH. Well, if you are the one training her, perhaps she won't be such a useless vixen. Kyuubi's comment, while drenched in his usual sarcasm, made Naruto feel a bit of pride from the beast's compliment. Sakura. Do you really know what you're asking? I would teach you to become an assassin, a killer. You are still pure, an angel in the light, while I am an agent of darkness. Sakura stifled her sobs and wiped away her tears, bringing her mouth right up to his ear. Then bring me into the darkness. I will do anything to stand with you. Those words, said with such determination, such emotion, made it clear to Naruto that even if he wished to, he could not deny her heartfelt request. Naruto grabbed her hand with his own, intertwined their fingers, and made his forehead touch hers. Sakura could only quiver in excitement as he spoke such meaningful words and granted her wish. Fine then, Sakura Haruno, from today onward I will take you on as my apprentice assassin. I promise I will teach everything I can to make you a true follower of the code and will from now on never leave your side should you need me. That was as close to a start of relationship Sakura could translate, and kissed Naruto on the cheek, who only smiled and blushed. Thank you, Naruto. And with that, the two genin fell asleep, holding hands and practically in the same bed with two big smiles on their faces. Kusagaker. Next morning. Administration building. I brought your squad here to thank you. And apologize for the attack made on your lives. Ikaru bowed to the gathered Konoha shinobi, who by now were well rested and ready to go home. Yes. Thank you. Kakashi didn't know how to react, so he just scratched his head and bowed his head a bit, a reaction that made Sakura roll her eyes. Kakashi had already filled the elder in on what exactly happened when he left his genin at the inn. It was the leader's choice to meet his students now, however, Kakashi wasn't sure what he hoped to gain by doing so. Sure, Naruto was unique because of his heritage and training, but still, he was sure the village leader had better things to do. We had hoped to kill the rebels sooner to prevent something like this from happening, but we could never track them all down. It seems as though you finished the last of them off. How many ninja did you say there were? An aged Kusa-janin spoke up, and Kakashi struggled to answer his question. Well, I definitely saw the one at the camp, his name was Yoroko. Other than a grimace at the name, there was no response. And another, her name was Kyoko. We met her at the bridge. Naruto spoke up with his usual quiet, calm voice that led Ikaru's eyes to fall on him. Ah, the assassin speaks. It is a pleasure to meet one of the Namikaze. Ikaru walked up to Naruto and, while he stood almost a foot taller than him, bowed in respect. Namikaze Dono, I am honored you have graced our village with your presence, and thank you for your personal involvement in resolving this matter with the rebels. It's my understanding you killed them off along with the bandits they were working with. The Kusa-janin scoffed at the thought of just some kid killing Yoroko and Kyoko along with the bandits. Ha! Don't let that boy take credit. It's obvious this Konoha-janin did all the. A glare sent by Ikaru quieted him down immediately, and again the man bowed to the annoyed Namikaze. My apologies, Namikaze Dono. Since we lost our own assassin guild during the war, many have forgotten the respect we pay to the world's protectors. Naruto held up a hand in understanding, and the village leader saw the boy was modest, a good trait to have being an assassin and one he respected. No apologies necessary. Times have changed since assassins were the dominant force in the world. I'm just trying to make sure the Namikaze guild is not forgotten. Ikaru smiled and returned to his desk that they were standing in front of. Oh, you can be sure your tale will not be forgotten any time soon here in Kusa. You almost single-handedly defeated our most dreaded enemies for the past decade, and for that we are in your debt. Should you ever need anything while you are in Kusa, please feel free to visit as a welcome friend. The same of course goes to the rest of your squad. Not that it matters, an assassin is known to have certain liberties ninja do not. They can leave villages whenever they want on clan business, or they just don't live in the village at all. It's not technically a rule villages must follow, but it's done out of respect for what assassins have done over the centuries. I have already given your squad leader the payment for your mission, and again you have my thanks. Please feel free to stay in Kusa for as long as you wish until you return to Konoha. Kakashi and the others looked at one another and, while glad they could have a vacation, would rather be home instead. Thank you Kusadono, but we should really be getting back as soon as we can. This mission has been very draining on us. The man nodded in understanding and indicated they could leave as they wished. Naruto turned around to leave when the door opened to reveal a Kusa-Jonin leading his squad in, 2 boys and a girl. His breath caught as he took in the sight of the girl, bright and flowing red hair that seemed jagged and wild on one side while the other it looked perfectly straight and sharp. Her slim glasses reflected her vivid red eyes that seemed to be taking him in as well. Beautiful. Just like when I saw Sakura the first time. I don't know what it is about them, but they take my breath away. Karen immediately recognized those robes and almost gasped, but she held it in as she took in his physical appearance. He looked no older than she was, perhaps 14 years old. His actual body belied that, however, as he was built like a young man who had been through so much. The chakra he radiated was so warm and as red as her hair, it had such an effect on the sensitive senses she blushed from pleasure. Before she could be taken away by his face, an irate Sakura stood by Naruto and grabbed his hand. Ahem. Come along Naruto-kun, Kakashi-sensei and Sasuke have already left. Naruto allowed himself to be pulled away, but not before accidentally mouthing a few choice words that left Karen with a lasting impression. Beautiful red hair. The girl was easily able to fill in the first word and blushed on purpose that time, only to wake up when her teammates began to poke fun at her. She gave them her usual evil glare and threat to punch them if they didn't shut up. It worked like a charm as it always did. Jen gave his report that the entire sector they were given was combed for seedlings and successfully cleared. The village leader gave them his usual thanks and had General stay after. No doubt of which to talk about her, Karen thought. Her squad dismissed. Karen already knew what they were talking about with her enhanced hearing. The old fools still seemed intent on having her become the village's next top ninja, even though she came into their care, quite suspiciously if she may add, only about a year ago. Orochimaru-sama may think this place is suitable for a takeover, but I believe a mere hideout or two in the forests surrounding Kusa will be enough. Our main base should of course remain in Oto. Karen's job as Orochimaru's spy in Kusa was almost complete and, using her skills taught to her long ago, would disappear without a trace when her job was done. Following Orochimaru's will wasn't the best life, but as she traveled around and saw how others lived, she realized there was such a thing as worse off. And, she thought with a naughty smirk, she got to see rare things in front of her, such as a handsome young assassin. If they crossed paths again when they were older, Karen wouldn't mind having some fun with the Namikaze heir. Kusagaker. Gate. Kakashi looked to the sky at the screech of a hawk. It seemed they had a message from the Hokage. A few people stopped on their daily routes to observe the foreign shinobi at their gate, and a genin or two would poke their heads up from whatever food stall they were dining in to catch a glimpse. Kakashi held out his arm and the animal immediately came to him and landed perfectly, allowing the man to take the message from its pouch attached to its leg. Naruto and Sakura watched as he skimmed the short message, nodding to himself. Sasuke just leaned against the gate, tapping his foot impatiently as he wanted to get a move on. Their teacher took out a small scroll and placed it back in the hawk's carrying case to send back to Konoha.